Hello everyone and welcome to the game Devlog number 1. Just to quickly remind you, the last video was a quick introduction to the series, and in that video I talked about the first feature that I was implementing for the game, which was a really rough terrain implementation. Now I want to go back to the terrain topic and show you just how much the terrain changed since the last video. But before I do this, there is just one more thing that deserves a bit of my attention. Namely, before I started improving the terrain, I spent some time to fix rather annoying issue with the camera movement. As so far there was a bit of delay between you press a key and move on the screen. So I recreated most of the movement code to make it feel much smoother. And I have to say that it absolutely blew my expectations. I don't want to brag too much about it, but I just want to say that it feels almost one-to-one like the free camera in CSGO when you die in a casual match. It is very fast and responsive, even with double buffering, which in CSGO absolutely ruins the experience. But back to the terrain topic. The overall improvements that I've made to the terrain can be divided into three categories: rendering, memory representation, and graphics. In the rendering category, the most notable change is switching from rendering lines to rendering whole triangles. Technically speaking, this change is not very interesting, as it is a matter of just one setting in the engine. What is interesting though is how this change impacted the overall appearance of the terrain. It introduced a very real problem concerning the geometrical properties of the terrain, as it became apparent that the current implementation of the terrain doesn't store enough data to really render anything that looks good. So the solution that I've came up with would generate data important for shading during the terrain generation process and then supply it to the GPU. This severely changed the memory representation of the terrain and took the most time to get right. With that said, this extra data enabled me to finally implement some shaders to the terrain, and personally I think that the terrain looks great now. Of course, this is not the final look of the terrain. I'm sure that I will make a lot of changes to it, but it is so cool to see the terrain resembling some grassy fields, and imagine how the game will look like after some more work. But to be fair, working with the terrain haven't been painless, and I've made literally dozens of shaders before I got something resembling grass. As a cool side note, I've experimented a bit with pixelated noise for generating the terrain material, but it was a failure as the effect was very nauseating. And to be honest, I hoped a bit that it will be the case, as I'm a big fan of simple graphical experiences. Another thing that was quite troublesome was the terrain generation. I'm certain that there is some kind of bug in my terrain generation algorithm, but I haven't been able to find it yet. All I know is that if you have complicated enough terrain, there can be quite a few gaps in it. So this is definitely something that I will be working on in the next devlog. Another thing that will be very important for the terrain will be the ability to render more than one chunk at a time, and preferably start developing some more complicated terrain generation algorithms, maybe even based on Berlin noise. But this is definitely something that will deserve a separate devlog video, and hopefully it will be the next one. So for now, I can only thank you for watching and wish you a great week. I hope to see you soon.